You already know you're going to die. You've known it since you were a child, and somehow, it changes nothing about how you spend your Tuesday. You still delay the work that matters, still treat the people closest to you like they'll always be there, with exactly the same patience for you. This video is not about death. It's about what death does to an ordinary day, when you actually let it. Because the Stoics discovered something almost no one applies. The moment you stop flinching from your own mortality, the fog clears. What's trivial becomes obvious. What matters becomes urgent. Let's talk about what the ancients already knew. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man alive. He commanded legions. He held the Roman Empire together during plague, war, and betrayal, often simultaneously. And every morning, before the demands of the world reached him, he wrote in a private journal, not for posterity, for himself. In one entry, he wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't spiraling into despair. He was placing a lens over the day. Memento Mori, remember that you will die, was not a funeral chant. It was a cognitive tool, a daily recalibration. The question this video asks is simple. What happens to your Tuesday when you actually use that lens? Law 1. Urgency is not stress, it's clarity. Most people confuse urgency with anxiety, rushing through life in a sweat, mourning every passing moment. That's not what Memento Mori produces. It produces focus. Think about the last hour before a long trip. Suddenly the email gets sent. The difficult conversation happens. You do in 60 minutes what you'd postponed for a week. The deadline clarified your priorities. Death is the longest deadline you have. And unlike the trip, you don't know when it falls. Marcus governed an empire under that uncertainty every day. He didn't freeze. He moved with precision because he'd already accepted the constraint. Before your morning begins, ask not what do I need to do, but if today were the last day I had this, what would I actually do with it? The answer will cut through most of your schedule like a blade. But there's something almost no one notices about what gets cut first. Law 2. Death exposes borrowed importance. Most of the things consuming your energy were never truly yours to carry, somebody else's opinion of your choices, a social comparison that started last year and hasn't ended, low-grade resentment over something said in a meeting. These feel important because no one has challenged their importance. Death challenges everything. Epictetus, born a slave who had almost nothing, taught that suffering comes from treating indifferent things as essential. Status, approval, comfort. When you genuinely imagine this Tuesday as your last, the borrowed importance evaporates. The grudge you've been carrying, it costs more than it's worth. The time spent curating how you appear rather than who you are, the math stops working. This is not about becoming indifferent to life. It's about becoming ruthlessly honest about what you actually value versus what you've been taught to perform. That distinction is the beginning of real freedom. But stripping away the false only matters if what's left is treated with something most people still withhold. Law 3. The people in front of you are already rare. One of the quietest devastations in a human life. You spend years with someone and only realize how extraordinary they were after they are gone. Not because you didn't love them, because you assumed continuity. You assumed there would always be another Tuesday. The Stoics practiced negative visualization, a deliberate imagining of loss, so that presence could be felt before absence arrived. Marcus wrote about his mentors and friends with a gratitude that reads almost like grief in advance. He knew the deal. The next time you sit across from someone who matters, a parent, a friend, a child, Bring the full awareness that this version of them in this moment is singular and unrepeatable. Not forever, not guaranteed, just this. That shift in attention is one of the most radical things you can do with a Tuesday. But the death lens doesn't only change how you see others. It changes how you face the work you keep delaying. Law 4. Delay is the most common form of cowardice. You are not lazy. You are afraid. The book you haven't written. The conversation you keep rehearsing but never have. These stay undone not because you lack time, but because as long as they remain unstarted, they cannot fail. Delay is protection. Seneca wrote, "While we are postponing, life speeds by." He had watched powerful men wither into old age, still waiting for the right moment to live fully. The death lens removes that protection. Once you feel the finite nature of your hours as a condition rather than a concept, the calculation changes. The fear of failure shrinks. The fear of a life that never became what it could have, that grows. And that fear, paradoxically, is the most useful one you will ever feel. But there is a version of Memento Mori people get wrong, one that turns clarity into paralysis. And it's worth naming directly. Law 5. Not every moment must be monumental. You hear live like it's your last day, and something in you rebels because you still have laundry, a dentist appointment, a Tuesday that is just a Tuesday. If death awareness makes the ordinary feel like failure, it has misfired. Marcus wrote about the beauty of bread cracking in the oven, the foam on a wave, small sensory moments, not to escape the grand questions, but because he understood that a life is not made of singular peaks. It is made of ordinary mornings received with full attention. Memento Mori does not demand you make every hour historic. It demands you stop sleepwalking through the hours already here. The task done with presence is more alive than the grand gesture performed on autopilot. That is the distinction most high-achieving people never make. And it points towards something that restructures the whole idea of what a good day actually is. Here is the turn most people miss. Memento Mori is not about making death feel closer. It is about making life feel real. The ancients didn't meditate on death because they were morbid. They did it because ordinary perception is numbing. We adapt to everything: comfort, beauty, love, time itself. The extraordinary becomes invisible. Death is the one fact that cannot be adapted to, and so it restores perception. A man who has genuinely sat with, "I could leave this right now," does not walk through the rest of the day on autopilot. He looks at his child and sees a child, not a task. He names his fear clearly instead of managing it around the edges. This is not gloom. This is the opposite of gloom. It is one of the most quietly radical acts of self-mastery available to you. And it costs nothing except the willingness to stop pretending the clock isn't running. You will not remember this Tuesday in 20 years, but the person you become on days like this one, ordinary, unwitnessed, entirely yours, that accumulates into something that cannot be undone. Marcus didn't write his private thoughts because history demanded it. He wrote them because the day demanded attention. That's the whole practice. One honest question before the noise begins. If this moment were all I had, would I still spend it this way? You don't have to answer dramatically. Just answer honestly. Because the life you keep meaning to live is hiding inside the Tuesday you're already in. Remember, you will die. Then go live like it.